Hey guys, how's it going? Depanda here. So today I was having a pretty good day until I came across this article by the New York Times. Um, Now I haven't read this article yet, but we're gonna go through it together. But the title of the article, VR is not a hit. That's okay. Not every technology needs to be in the hands of billions of people to make a difference. Okay, so starting off, he's right. Technology does not need to be in the hands of billions of people to make a difference. There's plenty of technology that's not in the hands of billions of people. In fact, if you look at, other video game consoles, I'm pretty sure video game consoles in general aren't in the hands of billions of people. Surely they're in the hands of millions, but not billions of people. Phones, on the other hand, maybe. Phones might be in the hands of billions of people. Computers, billions of people. But video game consoles in general, I don't think they're in the hands of billions of people. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But before we get started reading into this, VR is not a hit. That's okay. I knew an article like this was coming. I had a feeling. I had been checking every day since Christmas for an article like this to come out because, this was a great year for Oculus, selling tons and tons of the Quest 2, and it couldn't even catch up with the Quest 1 in the beginning of the year. Half-Life Alyx came out. The Index was sold out pretty much all year long. So it was a fantastic year for VR. And so then when Christmas comes around and even more VR gets sold, I knew there was going to be some disappointment. I knew that somebody was going to write an article like this. So pretty much every day since Christmas, I've been looking for an article like this because I wanted to react to it. And lo and behold, here it is. VR is not a hit. That's okay. All right, let's jump into it. I have no idea what it says. Let's go. You might never watch a movie in virtual reality with friends, despite what Mark Zuckerberg suggested 5 years ago. All right, wrong, actually. Plenty of people with virtual reality watch movies with friends. That's a very common thing for people to do if you have virtual reality. But maybe he's suggesting that not everyone's going to have that opportunity. Well, everyone can watch a movie in virtual reality. I mean, the Oculus Quest 2 is only $300. There's nothing stopping people from doing it except for the fact that it's kind of sold out right now. But anyways, beyond that, it's tons of people do this. All right, let's keep going. You might never buy stuff with a computer-based currency, Bitcoin, and you might never zip around in a robot-driven car. Those two things I agree with, actually. The currency Bitcoin, there was a lot of hype over it. There's still a lot of hype over it. I don't think it's ever going to be an actual currency right now. It's an investment. If you have Bitcoin, it's like a stock. It's an investment that you own. You're never going to spend it. You might sell it, but you're never going to buy anything with it. Originally, it was used to buy things illegally on the dark web, obviously, but now, as it stands, it's an investment. It's too volatile of a thing to be used as any sort of currency. And then also robot-driven cars. Actually, I have been zipped around in a robot-driven car. I don't think it's going to be a widespread technology, but they do exist. They do test it in my town. There's this company testing robot-driven cars. I've gotten to try it out. It's kind of cool. But that's besides the point. That's not VR related. These technologies excite people's imaginations and hold enormous promise, but they may never be as widely used as their proponents hoped, and that's probably okay. All right, first off, if it's exciting people's imaginations, it's gonna get there. It's gonna get there. Like the robot-driven car, like I said, it's not there yet. It's not widespread, but it's there. It's possible. I've done it. And VR, watching a movie in VR with your friends, it's doesn't hold an enormous promise. It's actually a thing. It's happening right now. There's people in big screen watching movies with their friends. Anyways, I'm probably judging it too much at the beginning. Let's get through more of it. Not every technology needs to be in the hands of billions of people to make a difference. Finding a comfy niche can be good enough. That's true. I mean, if you're trying to make a profit, you don't need to be, I think about it in the terms of social media. I don't need to be PewDiePie to make a profit. I could be perfectly happy with a smaller niche and grow. In the same way, maybe he's suggesting virtual reality doesn't need to be the next PS2. It could just be what it is now, making a small profit for those involved in it. But whether or not it's going to end up being the PS2 or not, that's up for debate. Recently, my colleague Kevin Roos confessed his love of strapping on virtual reality goggles. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? They're called virtual reality headsets, head-mounted displays, HMDs. They're not goggles. Whatever. He confessed his love for shopping on virtual reality goggles for workouts that left him sweaty, sore, and smiling. Yeah, exactly. I do have a video out that I just posted where you use VR for workouts. It's a really good way. I've seen lots of people lose tons of weight with virtual reality. We'll have to take Kevin's word that lunging at virtual flying triangles on his patio is fun, but it is noteworthy because VR has mostly been... You have to take his word for... What are you talking about? You have to take his word for it. There's nothing stopping you from going out right now, buying a VR headset, and trying it for yourself. Okay? And no, VR has not mostly been a disappointment. I'm sure he's going to explain what he means by that, but I'm just going to insert this right here. VR has not been a disappointment. VR has been blown my expectations out of the water, and it has been amazing. Let's keep going. Not so long ago, VR was predicted to become a very big deal, but instead most of us are happy to ignore it. The same goes for a similar technology called augmented reality, which mixes virtual images with the real world and allows people to go check out how a pair of shoes might look with their outfit or play Pokemon Go smartphone in the park. Sales of some VR systems like Facebook's Oculus did increase during the pandemic. Yes, it increased a ton. And it's possible that VR and augmented reality could still make it big as Apple, Facebook, and other companies keep working on the technologies. For years, though, they have remained far outside the mainstream. All right, hold on there. Hold on there. Before we keep going, it takes time for things to be adopted. All right, you have to understand, VR was very hard to get into when it first came out. You had to have a big, fancy computer, and then you also had to buy a headset that cost, nearly $1,000. I can't remember, what was it, like $600, $800 for the original Vive. Anyways, it was expensive to get into, and it wasn't very good. That's how every technology is. That's how the computer was when it first came out. And by the way, that's how video games were. All right, I had this open because I knew they were going to say something like this. I have this open. This is the first generation of video game consoles. The first generation of the Odyssey, the very first video game console. I mean, I could be wrong, and I don't know how reliable of a site this is, but the first generation console, the Odyssey, only sold 130,000 units in 1972. Only 130,000. All right, just to understand, I believe Oculus has made well over 1 million or 2 million. I know it's at least 1 million. I can't remember if it's 2 million units to sell the Oculus Quest 2 this year. Much more than that. Now, obviously, the Quest 2 isn't the first generation, but I mean, just think about it. So the Odyssey only sold 130,000. The next year you have numbers like this: 330,000, 10,000, 150,000. Only in 76, 4 years after the first console comes out, do we hit 1 million with the Coleco Telstar. And frankly, I have no idea what that even is. I've never heard of this before. I've heard of the Odyssey, I've heard of the Atari, but Epic and Coleco, I've never heard of those two consoles. Moving on, 77, we start seeing Nintendo gets into the game, selling some consoles, and then in 1978, we have Nintendo selling 1 million units, and then in 79, finally, we're hitting 2.5 million, 80, we hit 3 million. Then somewhere in the 80s, I believe the NES releases, and I think the NES was the first big, widely adopted console. It sold like 60 million units its first year, something like that. So it took more than okay, if you look here, it took 4 years for any console to sell 1 million, and then it took a whole 6 years for the next console to sell 1 million, and then it took a whole, nearly more than a decade before it was mass adopted by millions of people. More than a decade for the first video game consoles to be adopted by a ton of people. All right, so let's compare that to VR. VR is a brand new technology. It's not just another video game console. It's not just another PlayStation 5 or 6 or whatever. It's a brand new technology, and it's going to take a while for it to catch up to the point where people can afford it and to where it's going to be well known and people are going to want to go out and buy it, like the NES, all right? VR is in a good place. Like 2016 or 2017 was when the first generation was hitting the markets, and now 4 years later in 2020, I mean, it's already 2021, so 4 or 5 years later, the Quest 2 is becoming mainstream. VR is becoming mainstream. I mean, it's maybe not widely adopted, but everyone at least knows what virtual reality is. And honestly, it's the younger generation that's grabbing onto it and wanting it, and the only thing holding them back from getting it is, you know, their parents' pockets. So, I mean, I could go on and on about this, but in summary, the first video game consoles took a bit for them to get adopted. It took years, over a decade before they hit nearly, 60 million in sales. And you expect VR within like a year or two, within 4 years, to already be at that level? No, it's a brand new technology, and it takes time for it to get there. It's not been a disappointment. It's been exactly what we expected. But anyways, let's go on, keep reading the article. As Kevin's column showed, that doesn't mean that these technologies are destined for the dustbin of failure. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It highlights the vast middle ground between a flop and a technology used by billions. Yes, again, there is a vast middle ground between that, and again, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure video game consoles aren't in the billions. In fact, let me look that up. PS5 sales. PS5 is selling worse than any Sony home console. That's interesting. Let's go to PS2 sales. I know PS2 was like the biggest console for the longest time. As of September 2020, the PS2 has sold 158 million units. I don't know if that's just in 2020 or over time, but that's pretty far from billions. So yeah, no video games are being adopted by billions. So this is a tech columnist. Maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like he doesn't really know what he's talking about. Anyways, let's keep going in this article. Where were we? I've written before about our affinity for cool technology over more pedestrian advances, and how this fixation can lead to overheated predictions that the latest flashy tech thing will take over the world. Our interest wanes if something turns out to not be that big of a deal. I mean, yes. I mean, I feel like the person writing this is probably, I'll have to look them up, but they're probably from my generation, maybe a little bit older than me. Grew up with, the vast advancements happening. Like, you got to realize, if you were born in like the 90s, the internet was already here, and technology grew wildly fast, and people adopted it wildly fast. And so I think maybe a lot of people from my generation, the millennials, they start to think if it's not adopted as quickly as the phones were or as fast as the internet was, then it's a flop. And in reality, what you got to understand is that's not how things used to be. It used to take time for technology to be adopted. It was only in the 90s and 2000s that technology rapidly grew to the point where people were adopting new technologies every year. And so it's a false expectation, all right? It just because VR didn't get adopted as quickly as smartphones did, it doesn't mean it wasn't that big of a deal. VR is absolutely a big deal. I mean, even NASA and the military, and there's so many uses for VR. It's changing society as we know it. It's just taking a little bit of time, and I think that's okay. The outcome may not be as momentous or world-changing as initially hoped, but that doesn't mean the technology is pointless. Yeah, it wasn't world-changing. I mean, it is changing the world, I think, and I think it will as it becomes more evolved. I mean, again, it took a decade for the video game console to get to the point where it was selling 60 million units and changing the world. It wouldn't surprise me if a decade, 2020, by 2061, 2026, whatever the number is, I wouldn't surprise me if by 2026, the VR industry is changing the world because of the applications and uses for it. I mean, honestly, like VR driverless cars may never hit the road in huge numbers, or they might. This guy doesn't even know what he's saying. He's saying they might never, might, or they might. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. I guess his whole complaint here is that it's not doing it as quickly as he would have hoped, because he's been conditioned by our most recent history to think that things need to be adopted much more quicker. But when you have huge advancements that take time to catch up and to be as good as what we have now, it takes time. Okay, just because VR was invented doesn't mean tomorrow you're going to have a world-class VR headset available for everybody to have for a couple $100. All right, that's just not how it works. It takes time for these things to become cheaper and more affordable and more advanced. These niches don't fit in the breathless predictions that everyone in the world might use virtual currency or strap on VR. Quit calling them goggles. If you're a freaking tech journalist, you should know these aren't VR goggles. They're head-mounted displays. They're whatever. And moving on, but it's not a terrible thing. Sometimes we need to lower the bar for success. Yeah, we absolutely need to lower the bar for success. That's the one thing he's right about. I mean, people are making a profit with virtual reality. Lots of people are making a profit with virtual reality, and that means it was successful. I believe that VR will be adopted by the millions. I believe VR will be as big as the PlayStation consoles or Xbox. I think it's going to be that big in the coming years, and I'm not disappointed at where it's at now, actually. Like I said, it took years for the first video game consoles to become a widespread thing. In the same way, as technology develops, as VR becomes more refined, think about it. Think about the limitations that VR has. You have to render a screen twice. We can't even do that in 4K, and until now we might be able to do it with a 30 series graphics card. We might be able to do virtual reality in 4K, but before it was nearly impossible to do because of the technological limitations. Now that we have that possibility of rendering two screens 4K at at least 60 hertz, point is, technology needs to grow and advance. We had this idea, we had VR headsets as an idea, and the technology to do it is becoming possible, and because of that, now VR is becoming more widespread. I could go on and on about this, but honestly, I don't know who wrote this. Maybe it's up at the top. Oh, there it is. Shira Ovidi. Let's see who this is. Oh, it's a girl. I'll apologize right now if I made any references to the author as a he. Turns out it's a woman. And she, frankly, I don't feel knows what she's talking about when it comes to virtual reality. I think VR is becoming very widely adopted by the millions. Just not by the tens of millions, or the standard that she has set here is billions. And again, there aren't very many technologies that are adopted by the billions. Maybe computers and the internet. The internet for sure has been adopted by billions, but not very many other technologies have. So anyways, that's it for this video, guys. I just wanted to react to this article. I knew it was coming, an article like this, and finally we found it. It is kind of funny to see these people's reactions to VR when they really don't know what they're talking about. VR is a fantastic technology that we have and that people absolutely love to use. And as it said in the beginning, you might never watch a movie in virtual reality with friends. Well, no, I watched just not too long ago, got together with some people in my Discord server, and we watched a couple episodes of anime together in a freaking movie theater type situation. It was fantastic. Join our Discord if you want to go to events like that, by the way. So yeah, VR is becoming something amazing. Anyways, I've been going on and on, so I'll end it here. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it till the end, make sure you subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. That's it. I'm out.